Hello one, hello all. This is 2 Minute Drill, episode 9. Have a little bit of a different episode this week. Other three guys could not be here, so in the stead you get little old me for an hour straight. But not so fast. Not so fast. We have a pretty special episode for all our listeners tonight. Bama Man, I know you're pretty consistent out there on the views. So we have a special guest joining us tonight in place of our other three co-hosts, Colin, Ben, and Cole. Due to unforeseen circumstances, they could not make it. But exciting weekend in college football that we get to recap. Exciting weekend ahead of us. A lot of playoff implications. So without further ado, I know everybody's just sitting on the edge of their seats. We have our very, very own Randy from Mobile joining the show tonight. Randy, you are live and we hear you. How are you doing, Randy from Mobile?
I'm doing great, buddy. Just excited to be here. Long-time listener, first-time co-host.
There we go. How you feeling? First-time podcasting, my guy. How's it feel?
Feeling good, buddy. Feel like I've made the big leagues here.
Oh, big leagues.
I feel like I'm right up here with, Joe Rogan and Josh Pate, some of these other, famous podcasters in America.
Hey, keep in mind now, we're bigger than Joe Rogan now. Okay, this is a lot broader than Joe Rogan. Okay,
I understand.
A lot broader than that.
I just had to use someone, that I thought the viewers could connect with, and understand.
Oh, absolutely. But I just want our viewers to understand that we are bigger than Joe Rogan.
Absolutely.
So with that, we're just going to dive right into it, Randy from Mobile, on this special episode. Talk a little AP Top 25, possible outlook, strength of schedule. These are the updated AP Top 25s that came out yesterday, with Oregon taking the top spot, 11-0, Ohio State following suit. Basically, the top 5 stayed exactly the same, with Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana. There was no movement there. Then you have independent Notre Dame coming in 9-1 at the 6th spot. Alabama moving up 2 spots to 7. Georgia at 8 after their win over Tennessee. Tennessee falling to 10. Ole Miss sitting right around in that area as they were. I believe they moved up 2 or 3 spots to 9. Then Miami, Boise State, SMU, BYU, Texas A&M. They all follow suit along there, and you can see on the screen. Oregon, little struggles against Wisconsin. Victory 16-13. Randy, your thoughts on the struggles at Wisconsin for Oregon?
I think a lot of it had to do with scheduling. Oregon was playing their 8th straight game. Wisconsin coming off of a bye at home. Oregon traveling over 2 time zones. A lot of that stuff comes into play. Oregon also goes on bye this week, so you've got one team that's 8 weeks in a row. They're struggling to get to that bye week. They're looking ahead to that bye week, and then you've got Wisconsin essentially having the number 1 team come in. They're playing for their Super Bowl, and they really did what they needed to do and muddied the game up, slowed it down, made it a grind. But at the end of the day, they just couldn't make the plays to get the win.
And a lot of people don't realize, especially on the inside of it, traveling cross country against 3 time zones, let alone 1 time zone, is hard enough for a team. I know teams nowadays fly everywhere, and you can get across country, 2 hours, 2.5 hours tops, and we think, oh, that's no big deal. But from the logistical side standpoint of it, it takes a toll on players to have to pack their things up, make sure they're prepared for this, then sit on a cramped plane ride for 2.5 hours, go, and have jet lag and have a 2-hour time zone difference, and go into a place like Wisconsin, who is known for jump around. It's a dangerous environment. It's an evening game, turning into night game. I mean, it's this is the implications of home field advantage in NCAA, and Oregon, we see, like you said, they're on their 8th straight game to where they haven't had a break. Wisconsin's coming off of a bye. They're playing their Super Bowl. They were well rested. They had 2 weeks to prepare, and Oregon did a great job of holding on to the end and coming out with a victory.
Yeah, and whenever you look at Oregon's schedule and you look at their last 5 games, 3 of their last 5 games have been on the road, and it's been those cross-country treks, and that's something that they're going to have to deal with, joining the Big Ten the way they did. But their last 5 games, they went to Purdue, which for those that may not know, Purdue is in the state of Indiana, so they've traveled a couple of time zones there. Then they hosted Illinois, traveled to Michigan, which again was a couple of time zones. Then they hosted Maryland, and then to Wisconsin. So basically, every other week they've been taking a long trek, going at least 2 time zones like that. And like you say, I mean, that's just a big deal. Even if it is, a 2.5 hour flight, you still got to get to the airport, get everything unloaded, get from the airport to where you're staying, and it just adds to the grind of the week. So I definitely think that played into to Wisconsin's favor. But whenever you look at the Big Ten, teams that travel 2 time zones, they really seem to struggle. And that's something that I think you're just going to continue to see with that conference. It's not going to be like it is in the SEC to where you only travel, 30, 45 minutes by plane from state to state, going to Florida or Louisiana or whatever. It's going to be a grind on those teams.
That's exactly right. And we're now in the deep portion of the season to where every game matters, especially for all these top 25 teams. And so I'm not sure what the rest of Oregon's schedule looks like going forward, but
all they have going forward is a rivalry game with Washington in 2 weeks. Like I say, they're on bye this upcoming week, and
That's correct.
The weekend they play Washington, and then they'll go to Indianapolis. They have already clinched their ticket to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship.
Yes, even with a loss to Washington, which is probably not going to. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen because anything can happen. It's college football, but even with
I know
a
it's
loss,
different circumstances, but the last 2 years when Kellen DeBoer was at Washington, they seem to have Oregon's number. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. With the turnover at Washington the last couple of years.
That's exactly right. With that, I kind of want to go into the outlook on strength of schedule. So we kind of are, and I'm not even going to say that we're figuring out what the committee's looking at because nobody's ever going to figure out what the committee's looking at in the entire history of college football because it's a different thing every year. But strength of schedule seems to matter in some instances, and then some instances it doesn't. Just like in the case with Indiana being ranked 5th, yes, they're undefeated. Yes, they're in the Big Ten, but their strength of schedule is 66th. That's one of the worst in the whole entirety of the top 25 in the rankings that came out on Sunday. And if you look at Indiana's schedule and who they've played, they haven't played anybody that's been over a 500 win percentage besides who? Michigan? But no, Michigan's 5-5 now. Illinois 7-3. And they're getting credit for a top 25 win now that Illinois is back in the rankings at 24. So that's the whole reason their strength of schedule skyrocketed from 100 to 66. But they haven't played anybody. They don't have a top 10 win. You have Georgia, who has 3. They lead now with 3 ranked wins: Clemson, Tennessee, and Texas. Bama's second. Georgia.
Hey, I misspoke. They did not play Illinois. I just put up their schedule right here.
I was thinking they didn't play Illinois.
I mean, whenever you look at their schedule, I guess you're probably saying that their best win is
Michigan. It's got to be, or Michigan, one of those two. And
both of those teams
even
are 5-5.
Still,
both of those teams are 5-5.
Exactly. And most teams are just given credit for Michigan because of Michigan's namesake. That's why they're saying, oh, well, they got to win over Michigan. Yeah, but Michigan they lost a group of seniors that won them the national championship last year.
Washington is 6-5. That's the only team that I see that is actually above 500 on their schedule. And you're talking about hanging your hat on a 6-5 win over Washington.
Exactly.
And when you look at this playoff committee, one thing that concerns me, and we've kind of talked about this, is with the teams that make their conference championship, whether whoever it be from the SEC or whoever it be from the Big Ten. I think really those two are the only ones that have a chance to get multiple teams into this thing. But the committee seems to have such a knee-jerk approach to this thing. It's like what happened the previous Saturday carries so much weight on their rankings. And they're moving teams up 3, 4, and 5 spots in the top 15 based on that 1 week. And it's almost like, what happened this past Saturday affects us more than what's happened for the past 10 weeks combined. And so that's the one thing that's kind of concerning me going forward is, if you see a Texas and a Georgia rematch in Atlanta, or Texas and Alabama playing in Atlanta, or Georgia Alabama rematch in Atlanta, is the loser going to be out? Because to me, that's just insane when you think about the team that finished second in a conference going to play an extra game against the conference champion, losing that and not having a chance to go to the playoffs. Meanwhile, the team that finished third, fourth, and fifth in that conference sat at home, but they get a free pass to the playoffs, and probably one or two of those teams get to host a playoff game.
Exactly. And so with that, the committee originally came out and said at the beginning of the year, hey, we're not going to penalize teams for making a conference championship and losing. But now it's looking like in certain instances with the SEC, especially for Alabama, we have to win and go to Atlanta, it looks like, to get in. And then we have to win in Atlanta to have a chance at the playoffs. And still, we may not even get to host a playoff game. Oh, well, if we win, obviously we get a first-round bye. But still, even then, you don't even get to host. That's a bowl game at a neutral site. So it's looking like if you're the champion, you don't get to host. And so another thing, like you said, so the 2, 3, 4, or the 3, 4, and 5 teams are getting a bye. I don't think it's fair that teams like Notre Dame, sitting at 9-1 with maybe one good win at the beginning of the season over Texas A&M, one good win, they're independent and they get an extra bye week. And let's say, we do make it to Atlanta, we do lose, and we are a 10-3, a 3-loss team. I don't think it's fair that we went and we played in our conference championship and lost, and Notre Dame got to sit out and sit at home, and they would more than likely get in. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, and that's where this whole strength of schedule thing comes into play. Whenever you start breaking down the strength of schedules for all these top teams, all strength of schedules or all schedules are not the same. I mean, you can get by when you're Miami. Miami's a great example here. Miami has the 64th best strength of schedule. Miami has had like 4 one-score games with Cal, with Va Tech. We all seen what happened on that Friday night. Of course, they got beat by Georgia Tech. Those are games to where Miami only brought their C+, B- that week. And luckily for them, they were playing the Cals of the world. They were playing the Virginia Techs of the world. If Miami's playing Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and they bring their C+, B- game, they're losing those games.
That's exactly right.
And so that's the thing with this. I mean, everybody wants to say that a win is a win, and you can't reward teams for losing, and you can't penalize teams for winning. Well, it's just not the same in some instances. I just don't think half the teams in this top 25 could go 8-4 or better in the SEC.
No, most definitely not. And if you're looking at an Illinois, you're looking at an Indiana, you put a 6-4 Missouri team in the place of Indiana's schedule. Missouri's undefeated, just the same as Indiana.
7-3 Missouri.
7-3 Missouri. I mean, they're going undefeated just the same as Indiana, and the level of competition and the pace of play in the SEC is just bukus ahead of any other conference. And I know we have a tendency to be biased about the SEC, but it's evident, and people will argue until they're blue in the face just because they don't like that. That's the way that it is. That's just the way that it is, and you can't do anything about it. I mean, it's proven. I mean, you look at it. You have 5 teams with a strength of schedule that are within the top 25, like actually a strength of schedule of 25 or higher. Yep. 4 of those are from the SEC, and then 1 is Ohio State. You have Alabama with a strength of schedule of 12, Georgia with a strength of schedule of 8. You have South Carolina with a strength of schedule of 15. I mean, and Texas with 14. Texas is 14, and then Ohio State's right there at 18. Those are the only 5 teams in the entirety of the top 25 with a strength of schedule that's actually 25.
Yeah, and if you want to throw Texas A&M in there, their strength of schedule is 24. So those teams are the only ones that have a top 25 strength of schedule, and every one of them except for Ohio State are from the SEC.
is from the SEC, and that just goes to show you that week in and week out, just like you said, you can't bring your C game this week. You can't bring your B plus game this week. You have to bring your best every week. Alabama learned it the hard way against Vanderbilt. We were still hungover from Georgia, and we thought, it's Vanderbilt. It's at Vanderbilt. This ain't no thing. And we went in there, and we got our eyes beat shut.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the way it is.
And that's the thing, going back to what started this segment, is when you look at the SEC teams, I mean, you look at Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. That's 5 teams. Mm-hmm. Unless Notre Dame gets beat. Now, if Notre Dame gets beat, then that opens the door for 5 SEC teams to get in. As of right now, you're looking at 4 Big 12 teams, or 4 Big 10 teams, 4 SEC teams, ACC, Big 12, your at-large team, and then the ACC. So unless Notre Dame gets beat, either Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, or Texas are getting left out. And here's a monkey wrench to throw in the equation. What if Texas A&M beats Texas? That's going to propel Texas A&M up into the top 12. So now you're going to have exactly probably 6 SEC teams with 2 of them getting left out. So every single one of those teams is going to have a strong case and a strong argument. I would take any of those 6 teams
on a neutral site.
On a neutral site against anybody in the country except for maybe Oregon and Ohio State.
Yep.
Anybody else in the country, I take those 6 teams over, and yet 2 of them could possibly be left out. You can't sit here and say we're having a 12-team playoff and we want the best 12 teams when 2 of the best 8 teams in the country may be sitting at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get it. I mean, we're all for expansion. We're all for this. We're all for inclusivity. But at the end of the day, when the playoff was set up from the dawn of time in 2014, it was supposed to be the 4 best teams. And the precedent now is supposed to be the 12 best teams.
So, absolutely. And again, I know you have to take the whole landscape of the entire college football season. Answer me this question. What team in the country would want to go play a first-round game at night at Williams-Brice in South Carolina right now?
Not a single person. South Carolina is probably, other than Ole Miss, South Carolina might be the hottest team in the nation right now.
Could be.
And home field advantage for them at night at Williams-Brice is so evident. And
I've never been one to sit back and blame officials, but can you imagine if South Carolina finishes this season 9-3 with a win over Clemson? And they're sitting here thinking, man, if the refs had not screwed us
against y'all, LSU. That's exactly right. And Bama better be glad that South Carolina didn't mess around and beat us. They had every opportunity in the world, and we just happened to somehow capitalize at the end there and win.
Absolutely, So I think Alabama was still kind of riding that wave of beating Georgia, then getting shocked by Vanderbilt. And I think they were still kind of trying to figure out who they were. But really, since the clock struck 0 against Tennessee and this team realized, hey, our back's against the wall, you've kind of seen a different Alabama team. I think part of that goes to just them really getting focused. And I think a lot of it also comes to Kane Womack and the defense have really turned a corner. I think everybody seems to be on the same page. Earlier in the season, whenever you go back, especially to that Vanderbilt game and that Tennessee game, you had guys like Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson that were just kind of playing. It looked like they were playing a little bit slow, like they were thinking a lot and not reacting. And you go back to the last 3 weeks, and those guys have just been flying at the football. I mean, they've been reacting upon the snap, making plays.
So before we get into the Bama game, because we will recap that for all the listeners, we were talking earlier in the week because Randy from Mobile, we're always in contact with each other. Huge time listener,
always talking ball.
Always talking ball. Special guest here. You made a good point earlier in the week about how misconstrued the playoff setup is, and I don't think anybody has realized this, and I don't think anybody will realize this, just because we have been so accustomed to bowl games is neutral sites. Bowl games, end of the season, it's a huge ordeal. The team gets to go to someplace new. It's a cool NFL stadium, and I'm one to tell you it's an awesome experience no matter what bowl game you play in. Just because of the hospitality of the bowl people, it's awesome. But I think we've got it backwards with 12 teams now. And you brought up the fact that it sucks because your 4 best teams get a bye.
Yeah, they don't get rewarded. They don't get rewarded.
But they don't get rewarded because those games are at neutral sites. Whereas a first-round team who sit at home, they get to host. They will be at home field. Could you imagine Alabama hosting a playoff game at Bryant-Denny at night at 6:30?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's look at the standings right now, okay? So as it sets, just by looking at the graphic you've got up on the screen, okay, let's just say Oregon's the highest-ranked Big Ten, so let's say they win the Big Ten. Texas is the highest-ranked SEC. Then you got to go on down to Miami for the ACC, which is 11th, and then you've got to go down to BYU, which is actually outside the top 12, but they're the highest-ranked in the Big 12. Those 4 teams, BYU, Miami, Texas, and Oregon, they all get first-round byes. Meanwhile, Ohio State, who didn't win their conference, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Alabama, those are the next 4 highest-ranked teams. They get to host a playoff game. Now, for people that just watch the game and they're just worried about the outcomes, they probably not thought about this, but the economic impact on a college and a city when you just have a home game versus Mercer. I mean, you think about the people. You think about players' families coming in for the weekend. You think about people coming out of town for the weekend. They're eating in your restaurants. They're staying in your hotels. They're buying concessions. They're paying for parking. I mean, every single home game, whether it be Mercer or Georgia, is a multi-million-dollar economic impact on your city. But yet the 4 teams that win their conference, they don't get that.
That's exactly right.
To a bye. If you want to do this thing the right way and you want to make conference championships matter and all those things, okay, make, like you said, make 5 through 12 in that first round, make those the bowl games, make all those teams go to a neutral site to where no one has a clear advantage, and then let the second round be on campus to where now Oregon and Texas and BYU, Miami get the home game.
They get rewarded.
Yes, they get the home field advantage because they deserve it for winning their conference, and they got the bye. It should be set up in their favor.
Absolutely, and that is, that is crazy to think that we didn't set it up that way. But also I get it. I mean, this is.
Well, I think a lot of this is a typical. This is uncharted territories. I know for a lot of younger people, I guess people that are probably 30 and under, they don't understand what college football used to be. I mean, it used to be to where there was no playoff system, there was no BCS. The BCS was implemented in the late 90s, and it pitted 1 versus 2. It used to be to where at the end of the season you had tie-ins to your bowl games. If you won the SEC, you automatically went to the Sugar Bowl. If you won the ACC, you were going to the Orange Bowl. So you may have like Alabama in the Sugar Bowl ranked number 2 in the country, and they might be playing the number 10 team. And then you might have, somebody from the Big Ten going to the Rose Bowl, and then somebody from the ACC going to the Orange Bowl. And then when it was all said and done, it was just a beauty pageant. The AP and the coaches poll voted on who they thought was a national champion, and it was never settled head to head. So that this whole system of BCS, 1 versus 2, top 4 playoff, and now top 12 playoff is still relatively new to college football. And I think it's happened so fast that we're just kind of winging it right now. We're not actually sitting down thinking about the logistics of how everything should play out in the future.
That's exactly right. And so with that, as we were talking about earlier, Alabama versus Mercer this past week, good confidence booster, I feel like. You get these teams to where it's Mercer. Everybody in the country knows it's Mercer. Everybody in the country knows that you're number 9 Alabama. And nobody wants to practice. Nobody wants to do things the right way, and you feel sorry for yourself because this is week 11 and I don't really want to do anything. I want to rest up and wait for Oklahoma. But I thought that our guys, like you were talking about Jihad, Deontay, and really just the whole team this week, we looked like we were ready to play. And again, it's Mercer, I get it, but people don't realize how big that is for a team to do the little things right in a game with not very much playoff indication, not very much indication in the SEC. It's a FCS opponent. I mean, I thought it was a great confidence booster.
Yeah, I mean, and say what you will, Mercer's 9-1. They're co-champion of the SoCon Conference. They're going to the FCS playoffs, and
That's exactly right.
we've seen Alabama teams in the past, traditionally late in the season like this. Normally, it's the week right before the Iron Bowl. Whenever you see Alabama play an FCS team, that's usually the week it comes in. But we've seen the Georgia States and the Georgia Southerns, and heck, even Mercer before. We've seen Alabama come in here and just kind of yuck it up for a half, maybe be up 7-14 at halftime, and then not put teams like this away until late in the third, early fourth quarter. And this was good to see this thing put away. You know, you knew after the first three drives, it's 21-0. You knew it was over with. You knew Alabama was having their way, and it's just good to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing too, I don't know how much you kind of paid attention because it was kind of hard to watch at times. I mean, it did look like a good high school team scrimmaging a JV team here, but I don't know if it's the typical offense that Mercer runs or if Mercer just put some of those plays in based on what Vanderbilt did. But I noticed they were trying to run several of the jet sweep RPOs and things like that, and I couldn't help but wonder if that's Mercer's typical offense. It would have been a real good tune-up to have played Mercer before Vanderbilt.
Absolutely. You know, the way that they threw in wrinkles like that, to see that before the Vanderbilt game would have been nice. And to add to that, Mercer, like you said, is a legitimate contender in the Southern Conference. They had 3 first-half drives that went into Alabama territory, and we just ended up forcing turnovers.
Right.
And I think that says a lot about the defense and how in the past, 4 or 5 games, we've created at least 2 or more turnovers.
Oh yeah, and I'm one of those old school guys. I would rather see a 35-0 shutout as opposed to a 49-14. But
yeah,
just like on Mercer's touchdown catch. I mean, when the quarterback threw a ball right between 2 defenders and the guy goes up and makes that one-handed athletic grab, I mean, hey, tip your hat to it, man. That's a great catch and a great play. So they get some athletes.
Yeah, and that's one of those plays to where everything goes right for them, and I mean, you're in the position, and they just happen to make the catch, and
Yep.
there's nothing you can do about it. I thought that our defense played amazing, and yet again, we have to keep this in perspective. It is Mercer, I get that, but still, you're creating turnovers. You're getting, and what I love to see is getting young guys in, getting reps for them, building towards the future, seeing what you have for next year. And Ty Simpson, I know he played a little bit in the second half, and he was 5 for 10 and 71 yards. But I think with what Kalen DeBoer is accustomed to coming from Washington, I think Ty Simpson, if he stays, he is what DeBoer initially wanted in a pocket passing quarterback, because DeBoer loves a pocket passing scheme. He loved it with Penix, but I also think that we've adapted his play call and we've catered to Milroe, especially this game. I mean, especially opening up, the play calling catered to Milroe. And the last, like you said, after that Tennessee game, a whole different Alabama team just emerged onto the field, and it seems like our play calling has graduated up to a new level. Defensive play calling has gotten to a new level. We're playing our best football as of now. We're playing it. We're playing complementary offense, defense, special team. All 3 phases of the game are clicking at the right time.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And as far as the Milroe situation goes, as long as he's there, he's going to be the starter. I mean, that is definitely obvious.
Yes.
But like you say, I do think that there are things that Ty Simpson does that will unlock more levels to DeBoer's offense. He was asked a few weeks ago in one of his press conferences, how much of his offense has actually been installed in this first year, and he even made the comment, that really this is not his offense. This is more of like a hybrid system that he's used for the players that we've got. While Ty Simpson may be more of the type of quarterback for DeBoer's system, DeBoer doesn't have the offensive linemen. I think as a whole, he doesn't have the group of receivers and the athletic tight ends that he would like to have. So with what you've got right now, Jalen Milroe is definitely best suited for this team with the big maulers and stuff up front. And I think that's why you're seeing Jalen Milroe have so much success, basically being your lead running back. But with the dangerous threat to be able to throw and hit the deep ball. And that's one thing that's, I guess, kind of concerning is even going back to before the Tennessee game, we really haven't seen one of those deep ball connections to be able to stretch the field like we were dependent on that so much in the first 4 or 5 games. And that's all anybody ever said was, oh, Alabama can't drive the field. They can't drive the field. They rely so much on the deep play. Well, now it's like, we've developed the intermittent offense. We're checking it down to the running backs. We are driving the field. Something that I do think this team is going to have to do if they want to be in a championship contending state of mind is find that deep ball again. They've been close the last few weeks, but they really not hit that.
Yeah, absolutely. But and I guess we can talk further, when we look ahead to Oklahoma in the next segment. I think you're going to have to utilize time of possession this game, especially with Brent Venables and his defense, and you're going to have to utilize drawn-out drives because the name of the game is protect the ball. But we'll get into that in the next segment. We can move on now to Georgia and Tennessee. Georgia coming alive in the second half. First half, really, too. I mean, in the second quarter. Carson Beck, 25 for 40, 347 yards, 2 tutties, no interceptions. This is his first game in 6 games without an INT. I think we saw the Carson Beck of old who is able to lead a Georgia team to a championship or to a bowl game or wherever their season may end up. This is the Carson Beck who was present last year.
Yeah, and he did a very good job of distributing the football. Completed 2, 4, 6, 8. He completed passes to 10 different players. When you were spreading the ball out like that, as good of a defense as Tennessee is, when you're having to guard the entire field and there's no idea where the ball is going, it makes it tougher. And when you're having to guard the entire field and you've got a quarterback that can find the open receiver, it makes it hard to defend. Playing quarterback in modern day college football is a lot like being a hot 3-point shooter in basketball. If your offensive line can buy you the time, you're going to find the open person. And finding the open person is like knocking down a 3-point shot. And Carson Beck did a great job of that Saturday.
And that's another thing that I want to shout out to. Tennessee's defensive line is no joke. They are legit. They have guys up front that can work your guys in the tackle spot. They create sacks. So Tennessee actually averages 2 sacks a game. They had 0 against UGA. So they did a fantastic job of, like you said, buying Carson Beck time, allowing him to distribute it out to his guys. I think Mike Bobo came into this game and a lot of things that we hadn't seen from Georgia in the past we saw this week. They utilized 1, 2, 3 of their tight ends. 3 of their tight ends totaled out to I think 106 yards receiving, and then Oscar Delp ended up with 2 of their receiving touchdowns. So I think they don't have those guys like Brock Bowers. They don't have that guy like Ladd McConkey. But when, like you said, you can distribute it out and you have guys that are averaging, 3 receptions here, 40 yards here at this spot, 40 yards here at this spot, it tallies up. And they did a heck of a job. Bobo did a heck of a job of getting play action going quick, getting it started. Their run game hasn't been the best, but they rushed for 106 yards. So When you can semi-establish a run game and then involve your tight ends in the passing game on play action, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, no doubt. They had 75 yards on 24 carries from their running backs. I mean, that's right at, 3 yards a carry. That's not impressive. But again, just like in boxing, it's just that body blow. It's just over and over and over. Even if you're getting to 2.5, 3.5 yards a carry, you just keep feeding your running backs. Then, like you say, you hit play action to your tight ends. You're a second dealt. Two tight ends are actually the leading receivers. Just those two alone had 106 yards. But what's impressive right here is how when you go back to the Ole Miss game for Georgia, it looked like every single play that they called was a screen pass or a wide receiver screen. Everything was around the line of scrimmage. They never even attempted to stretch the ball. In this game Saturday, you had Delp, Lovett, Lil John Humphreys, Anai Smith, Lucky, the tight end. You had 5 guys who caught multiple passes, averaged over 14 yards of reception. So they came into this football game knowing that there was some plays to be made against Tennessee's secondary, and that's where you beat Tennessee is in their secondary. If your offensive line can hold up and you can take some shots downfield, you can get them. And Georgia set that tone on the very first play of the game. Very first play of the game was a shot play downfield. So kudos to them for standing in the pocket, making those plays, and executing their game plan to perfection.
And that's the thing that's good about a persistent, even if it's not effective, like you said, 2 and 3 yards here at the run game. When you get those linebackers and you get the nickelbacks' eyes down into the box and down into their gaps, and they're constantly read and run, and you force a safety to maybe even walk down in the box to help, that's when you can utilize tight ends, connect them to the line, go into 12 personnel, have a tight end like Delp, and you bring a safety down into that box, and you have guys blitzing, and you have these linebackers, their eyes are having to get in the backfield. That's when you can hit these deep balls. That's when you can hit these big plays.
Absolutely.
So Georgia did a great job of that this week. And Tennessee outlook is still okay. They're still 5-2 in the conference. They're 8-2 overall. Nothing's dead yet. Chaos in the SEC. It's looking like, if everything plays out, if Texas A&M loses to Auburn this upcoming week, and Missouri loses one of their two, and then I believe, so you're going to have like 8 teams that are 8-2 in the SEC at the top spot, which is insanity. Absolute crazy.
The path to Atlanta is pretty well defined at this point, though, with Missouri. Right now, Missouri holds all the keys. Missouri is the one team, because once you get down to the 6th, 7th, 8th tiebreakers, it basically goes to your conference strength of schedule to that point. And so Missouri's the one team that Alabama has played that Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee have not played. So
Yes,
Missouri's the swing state right now. So if Missouri wins their last 2 games, they give Alabama the strength of record that sends them to Atlanta. If Missouri loses one of their 2 games, then it looks like Georgia would be going to Atlanta.
And it's wild.
In both scenarios, Alabama or Georgia would play the winner of Texas A&M.
Exactly. And it's wild because, we're already on the 4th bullet point of SEC tiebreaker rules. Obviously, number 1 is head-to-head. You always go with a head-to-head, but that's usually when you have 3 teams that are fighting for the 2 spots. And then you have to go to the 2nd bullet point, which is record versus all common conference opponents. But each team has played everybody so much in that top, the top 8, that you can't utilize that. So then you have to go down to the 4th one, which is the cumulative conference winning percentage of all conference opponents among all tie teams.
Right.
And I don't know if you know, but like you said, Alabama actually has the top spot. And so what you do is you take the record of all your conference opponents that you've played, you add it all up, and then you turn it into a percentage. And Alabama's is 53.1. Get this. This could be crazy now. LSU actually still has a chance to go to Atlanta. I don't think it's really set and defined. There's a few other keys that have to be set in motion for LSU to have a chance. But maybe not anymore because I think that
I think you're looking at it pre-Florida. Once Florida beat them,
I
they gave
think
them their
yeah,
third
yeah,
loss. So they're
yeah.
done.
I am. So they're out. But they did still have a chance even with the beatdown in Death Valley by Alabama in the previous week. So Alabama's is 53%. LSU's before this week was actually 48%, and they were actually in second place. But now in second place is Georgia at 46%. So
Yeah, that's where right now Missouri holds all the cards, because if Missouri loses one of their last two games, it would throw Alabama's percentage down. Um,
yes.
and of course, I mean, there's still a long ways to go. I know there's just 2 weeks, but even with this whole playoff scenario, you've got Georgia got to play Georgia Tech. We've seen Georgia Tech pull the upset of Miami a couple weeks ago. Laugh if you will. Tennessee still has to play Vanderbilt. Like we said, Texas A&M, and I'll tell you, with Alabama, going on the road to Oklahoma in a night game, this is going to be Oklahoma's Super Bowl. Auburn's going to come into Bryant-Denny the weekend after Thanksgiving for the Iron Bowl. That's going to be their Super Bowl. Hugh Freeze is looking for anything to try and hang his hat on. So, there's still a long ways to go in this thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so with that, let's look at the Pick'ems records for last week. I know these guys aren't here, but we're still going to look at them. Ben 3-1, Cole 3-1, tied for first. Ben now with an overall record of 17-8. Cole's at 15-8. Me and Colin tied for last at 2-2. My overall record is still the champ, baby, 19-8. And Colin's looking at 16-9. There will be no loser this week. Since the guys could not make it this week, we will do the Wheel of Doom will be coming back for all the viewers next week. Don't you worry. And so with that, we're going to go into our NCAA Pick'ems games, and I will text the guys later and get their picks. But Mr. Randy, we are going to have you as our very first special guest picker. It's an honor. It's an honor to be able to do this with you, sir. And we will also kind of preview these games and look into kind of the key takeaways that each team, is looking ahead for this Saturday's the matchups coming up. So
you'll
that,
apologize. I wasn't completely prepared, so I don't have my headgear for the Lee Corso Pick'ems, but I'll do the best I can.
oh no. It's no pressure. It's no pressure. No pressure at all, man. No pressure at all. You're just gonna get up there and say a few words like Mr. Corso does, and then throw on your magic Alabama elephant hat, and that'll be good. That'll be good enough. So first game on the slate, we have number 5 Indiana, 10-0. At number 2, Ohio State, 9-1. This is the 11 o'clock big noon kick. I think that this is going to be, obviously this is going to be Indiana's first test. It's going to be a hard environment. Even though it's an 11 o'clock kick, it's going to be a hard environment that they have to play in. The average, it was something crazy that I saw the other day. The average amount of attendances for each of Indiana's games this year has only been like 30,000.
Yeah,
and
Indiana Stadium
that's home
only holds
with
like
away.
55,000. Their home stadium only holds 55,000. They've only started selling out and having full capacity since they got like 5-6-0. So I'm taking Ohio State big in this one. Indiana, like we talked about it earlier, Indiana has the 66th best strength of schedule. They hang their hat on beating Washington and Nebraska, but this is going to be a completely different animal in the horseshoe. And I like I said, I take Ohio State 14 points minimum. I do think Indiana will come out early. They'll be kind of charged up, maybe look like they're going to go toe-to-toe with Ohio State for a quarter, maybe even a half. But I think in the end, talent just overrides emotion, and Ohio State was late.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's going to be 100,000 screaming fans in Indiana's face on Saturday at 11 a.m. And I think that environment alone is enough to rattle anybody, especially coming from a team whose average, and that's across home and away, has been 30,000 attendees all season long. And like you said, it's just a talent standpoint. I think they're a pretender, and we're going to find out this Saturday. Are they a contender? Are they a pretender?
Absolutely.
And I really just think that they're a pretender. Like we were talking about, best win is a 6-4 Washington, and it hasn't proven anything. And they have played the bottom 6 teams in the Big Ten as their Big Ten schedule, and that's not their fault. I get it. That's not their fault. This is the situation that they were dealt. They've won their games, but here you go. Here's where your strength of schedule can be boosted with a win like this over Ohio State, and you can punch your ticket in right here. So I'm taking Ohio State big at home. I don't think it's going to be a contest. I think you're looking at a score of probably 42-17, at least a 3-score game. So
absolutely.
Next game on the slate, little G5 versus P4 here. You got number 18 Army sitting at 9-0, looking pretty good in the Athletic American Conference. At number 6 Notre Dame, 9-1, independent. I don't know. I think our friend Josh Pate said it best. And I know he's never going to listen to this, but that would be awesome if he did.
Some people are just jealous,
Absolutely.
He doesn't have a big time show, doesn't have a big time podcast. He's struggling to make it. So he's not going to listen out of jealousy.
No, but you can believe you are what your record is all day long. And Army's record is good, but they're also G5. And they're going to get a little taste of Power 5 football here, Power 4, whatever you want to call it this week. But the same could go for Notre Dame. Their schedule, their best wins have come over at Texas A&M at the start of the season against a Mike Elko, who really, I don't know if he was expecting that. I don't know if it was sort of a coaching issue then.
You also had a situation where they was riding Connor Weigman earlier on in the season.
Exactly.
The freshman brought the spark in here. So, you had Mike Elko, like you say, figuring his team out, figuring out what was going on. Very first game as him being the head coach at Texas A&M. And again, it is what it is. But I think if you put Notre Dame and Texas A&M on a neutral site right now, I think Texas A&M would walk into Notre Dame and beat them by 2 touchdowns right now.
Right now with Marcel Reed, absolutely. Notre Dame would not have an answer for him. But this is also a Notre Dame team who lost to NIU at home. 6 p.m. kick at Notre Dame. It could be a Vandy versus Bama situation. I hope it is.
Notre Dame big. Listen right here. So, Lehigh, Florida Atlantic, Rice, Temple, Tulsa, East Carolina, UAB, Air Force, North Texas. That's been the Army schedule up to this point.
That's exactly right.
Go Army. Love America. Love what those young men and women do that are in our service academies. Notre Dame loses the game to Marshall. They lose the game to Northern Illinois when everybody in America just completely overlooks it and acts like Notre Dame's on a bye week and doesn't even realize that they're actually playing. And then all of a sudden you cut on your TV on Saturdays and you see the Notre Dame score and they're down by 10 to one of those teams. Everybody's kind of calling this, Army's ranked and all this. One thing that Notre Dame has got in their favor is they've already played Navy this season, so they've already played one of these service academy teams that likes to run the option and absolutely obliterated them.
Smoked them.
I think this will be much of the same. I'd say, pull them for you, Army, go get it done, but I'd say Notre Dame by at least 21.
Absolutely. Same for me. No contest at home. Everybody's watching this game. It's a top 25 matchup. They already played Navy, who runs a very similar system. I don't, and I think your boy, what's his face from Fairhope boy, Riley Leonard, yes sir. Riley Leonard's gonna carry it.
I would say Riley from Mobile, but he's actually from Fairhope, which is Baldwin County. But he's close enough. We'll call him Riley. Riley and Randy from Mobile. We got the R&R connection from Mobile, baby.
R&R, baby. R&R. Fairhope. Southern boys. I like it. Notre Dame big. So with that, we have a 6:30 SEC slate. Kind of weird. 2 SEC games at 6:30, but nonetheless. Texas A&M, number 15, Texas A&M, 8-2, At a 4-6 Auburn, 6:30 at night in Jordan Hare. What you thinking?
If Hugh Freeze had enough sense to get out of his own way and feed Jarquez Hunter the ball 25 to 30 times a game, they honestly may be 11-1 and fighting for an SEC championship or playoff picture. I mean,
Oh, there's no doubt.
you look at the close losses that they've had. They have lost some games that at the end of regulation, you just think that was impressive how they lost that. I mean, they just absolutely blew it, and a lot of it goes back to not riding your best player.
And I think the two games that hopefully everyone that comes to mind is Oklahoma and Mizzou, because those are the two that you had it. You were going to win the game, and then you don't put it in Jarquez Hunter's hands, but you put it into Peyton Thorne's hands, who we know when you put it into Peyton Thorne's hands, he's prone to make mistakes. And I'm not knocking Peyton Thorne. He's not a bad quarterback. It's just that his decision-making in these prime moments has not always been top tier. Peyton Thorne has always ran his best offense when he has had a good running back. You can go all the way back to his very first freshman season at Michigan State. He had Kenneth Walker III with him, and they were contenders in the Big Ten that season because of Kenneth Walker.
Oh, absolutely. And another game you look at for Auburn, you go back to the Vanderbilt game. Jarquez Hunter had 12 carries. 12. Only 2 in the second half. You had Auburn with one of their more successful drives in the second half. They get near midfield. They're grinding. They're picking up 7, 8, 9 yards of play. And then all of a sudden, Hugh Freeze has to get cute and try his little double reverse pass. They lose 10 yards and they blow that drive. You go back to Oklahoma, they have the lead, and for whatever reason, he calls it an RPO. Peyton Thorne pulls it and throws a pick six, and then after the game, he says, well, I really would have liked to have seen him hand that off there. Call a straight run play, especially when the two plays before you have Jarquez who busted out on 2 big runs. Yes, that's what I'm saying. So when you look at their schedule, I mean, they have lost to Missouri by 4, Oklahoma by 6, Arkansas by 10. That was the 5 interception game when they started Hank Brown. Cal, they had 5 picks. I mean, you go back and you look at this. Had they just rode their best player, and again, I'm not comparing Jarquez Hunter to Derrick Henry by no means, but you go back to the 2015 Alabama football team when you had Jake Coker, and then against Ole Miss that year, they thought they wanted to start Cooper Bateman. Went back to Coker, and they were just unsure of what they had. Well, it didn't take but about 4 games to realize, our best offense is to just feed Derrick Henry about 35 times a game, and you rode his back to a national championship. Hugh Freeze doesn't have the sense to do that with Jarquez Hunter. If he did, they would probably be on their way to a 10-1 showdown with Alabama. But I will say this about – go ahead.
What's wild is you would think they had it figured out, because didn't they play Kentucky before they played Vanderbilt?
Kentucky the week before, won by 2 touchdowns, and Jarquez had 300 yards.
Jarquez had like 47 with 30 carries. It was almost 30 carries. He was like 4th all time at Auburn for a single game rushing yards.
He had only 23 carries.
That's what I'm saying.
78 yards on 23 carries, and the very next week he gets 12.
Unreal. That's coaching. That's coaching. That is coaching. You don't have a lack of talent. You have the talent there. That's a lack of coaching.
Well, everybody's been on Hugh Freeze the entire season about Peyton Thorne. You think about this. Cam Ward supposedly took a visit to Auburn and ended up settling on Miami. Now, who knows if it's true or not? So many players talk crap, but Diego Pavia said that he actually, picked up the phone and called Auburn when he got in the portal, and they wouldn't even give him the time of day. Could you imagine Cam Ward or Diego Pavia at Auburn right now? But here's the thing. I think that Hugh Freeze has been scrutinized so much about not getting a quarterback in the portal. I really think he's trying too hard to prove that Peyton Thorne's the guy. And while Peyton Thorne
Yeah.
is a good quarterback, when you look at him statistically, his numbers are pretty good statistically. He's just turnover prone, man, and he's done it at some
Yeah.
of the worst times. And I think Hugh Freeze's arrogance and just trying to force Peyton Thorne down everybody's throat has blew up on him this year.
He's like Nussmeier in prime time. He's gonna throw that interception. He
Yep.
will throw it. And that's what I think. And I think for me, when you have a running back who is averaging 7 yards a carry, he's second in the SEC, right behind Dylan Sampson at Tennessee. He's got over 1,000 rush yards. I really think that if you shorten the length of the game, you hold time of possession, you control clock, Auburn has a chance in this one. Sure, they're not going to go play for an SEC championship. Sure, Texas A&M still is fighting for their spot. But when you have a dog that is backed up in the corner that has nothing to lose, they're dangerous. And just like you said, I get it. Hugh Freeze likes to get cute. Maybe his cuteness works this game. I hope it does. I hope he feeds Jarquez. We see how A&M's defense fares against a running attack. A&M's total defense is only number 11th in the SEC. P.S. Auburn's defense is ranked third. They have a defense that'll stop this offense. And so it just comes down to a matter of fact, is Hugh Freeze going to allow Jarquez to run the ball and hold time of possession?
Yeah, another thing I think that Auburn's got going in their favor right here, we talked about this earlier today. Texas and Texas A&M have not played in over 10 years. That game is sitting here looming next week.
Yes.
Is Texas A&M kind of looking ahead to that? You're going on the road. I sound like I'm an Auburn hater right here, which I guess I am. Everybody talks about how loud and raucous Jordan-Hare Stadium is. I've been in some that were louder. It is pretty loud. Now, there is some type of magic in that place to where if they need the ball to bounce off somebody's helmet or return a kick six or just do something crazy, they seem to have that voodoo magic. I don't know if that place is built on like an Indian burial ground and or whatnot, but I think I'm taking Auburn in this one. I just think when you look at their last 4 football games, they've turned the ball over one time or none. They seem to have a better handle on that. They're fighting for their bowl lives here. They had a bye week, then they played La Monroe. I just think this is set up for Auburn to win, and by me picking Auburn here, it's kind of a win-win. Either Auburn wins and I look like I'm really smart, or Auburn loses and I get to be happy in the fact that they lost. So I'll take Auburn. A 24-20.
I was hoping you'd pick Texas A&M.
But I will say this. I do think that there is capability here for Peyton Thorne to go back to a 3 or 4 interception night and them completely taxed. That's on the table too.
It's always on the table. And I think the keys of the game, just like we said, is run game. It's going to be a battle in the trenches, and I honestly think Auburn's trenches is going to be better defensively against Texas A&M's offense, and I think that their run game is better. Time of possession, and can Hugh Freeze make the right calls?
DJ Durkin has done a really good job with their defense this year. He has. He was actually set to be interviewed by Saban last year before Saban retired. When Kevin Steele retired the night of the championship game, it was rumored that Durkin was on his short list. Yep. And I've actually even heard, because Saban and Hugh Freeze are friends, I have actually heard that Saban's the one that kind of told Hugh Freeze, hey, you might want to give this guy an interview.
Yeah. I'm going to go Auburn as well. This is not just because you picked them, but I really do think at home, night game, them coming off of a win against ULM like they did with a confidence boosting they had.
It's senior night. It's their last home game of the year.
Yeah, senior night. And if they sacrifice the cow on the field like they do before every home game, all will go well. They'll have some special voodoo magic, and I think I'm going to go Auburn.
Gotcha.
With that, we go to primetime ABC, which is kind of wild that this is a primetime matchup, but, I mean, I get it. Primetime ABC, number 7 Alabama at Oklahoma. 5-5 Oklahoma, 8-2 Alabama. Alabama trying to cling on to playoff hopes. This is a scary one for Bama.
This one terrifies me.
It doesn't. This one doesn't terrify me as much as Auburn, because anything can go wrong in Auburn. But also the Iron Bowl is at Bryant-Denny this year, so I'm not as scared.
Right,
if it was if it was like last year at Jordan-Hare with all the bull crap that went on, I would have said we're done this year, no matter what. But this one is probably it's scary, just because we have everything to lose and they have nothing to lose. They're just like Auburn, fighting for playoff contention, backed up in a corner, and it's scary. And so, just like we were saying earlier, we started to getting ahead of ourselves, and we're getting into the keys of the game. I think the name of this game for Alabama is just protect the ball. Just protect it. Don't go in there trying to do anything miraculous, trying to, beat their eyes shut, prove a point. We've proven ourselves this year. We've proven ourselves. We just need to go in, play our game, protect the ball, control the clock, and we'll be fine.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of those games to where punting's not bad, I don't think. I mean, you never want to end a drive in a punt, but I would take ending a drive in a punt before I would an interception or a fumble return, especially, backed up in your own territory. If you go, 3 and out, or your drive stalls out and you punt and you're forcing Oklahoma to drive the field,
the length of the field
over and over and over again, I feel like eventually Alabama's going to hit a couple of big plays. Eventually they're going to put a few drives together, and they can win this game like Tennessee did. The one thing that scares me is Venables is a great defensive-minded coach, and them coming from the Big 12, they're kind of set up to stop the mobile quarterbacks. And when teams like Tennessee were able to stop Jalen Milroe, the offense struggled. So, if they can go in and they can slow Milroe down in the running game, Oklahoma may be onto something. Alabama running backs are they're only averaging about 3.5 to 4 yards a carry this year. They're not what we thought they would be. They're not explosive from the line of scrimmage. One thing Alabama's done in the last few weeks to combat that is just checking the ball down to running backs. Like in others, Jam Miller was the leading receiver. A swing pass or a check down for 7, 8, 9 yards, that's just an extension of the running game. So I think if they do more of that, spread the ball out, incorporate the tight ends, I think they'll be fine. And like I said, this game really worries me, but I would say Alabama, 27-17.
And that's the thing that, we were kind of talking about earlier in the podcast was, Bama fans are kind of waiting for us to get back to, big shot play, Ryan Williams over the top, Jeremy Bernard across the middle, and then him scoot around and make a move. But like you said, I think the name of this game, we need to lean on play action. And like you said, Venables' defense is very good at stopping a mobile quarterback. And so it's going to be up to us and the coordinators to position Milroe in a way that we can get him going earlier with dump passes. Let the running back chip on a DN and then go out to the flats and get it quick out to him, like we utilized Robbie Oust this last week. Let's let guys chip on an end, and then if they send a blitz to try to combat a run, let's throw it over the middle to a tight end on a seam. I just think that it's going to come down to, like Tiger Woods says, KISS. That's his acronym. Keep it simple, stupid, and that's all we have to do is just keep it simple. Right. Especially, like you said, our run game hasn't been superb, but it has gotten better over the last 2 weeks. And I think, if we can, and I already think coming into the games, if we get the linebackers' eyes in the backfield and we utilize play action, I think we're good. Because once we start utilizing play action and we spread them back out and they're not playing sound gap defense, that's when we can run our typical outside zones with Milroe. That's when we can run read options in the second half. And I think as long as we don't have any turnovers, We win the turnover battle with our defense, forcing them to drive the length of the field. We don't do any silly mistakes, no silly penalties, anything like that. I think we're good on the road at Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I think Alabama, has played 10 games. They're sitting on 24 forced turnovers right now. So they're averaging turning the ball over to opposing offenses 2.5 times a game. And these last 2 weeks, as you finish this stretch out, trying to punch your ticket to Atlanta and possibly the playoffs here, you're playing two teams that have struggled at the quarterback position at times with turning the ball over. As long as the offense doesn't turn the ball over, I feel like the defense is good for a turnover or two. Something that we've seen, again, since Tennessee, and maybe this is because of the level of competition, maybe because this is something that Alabama's put a priority on. Alabama has done a much better job of capitalizing off those turnovers and actually scoring points on the subsequent drive. Tennessee, you had 3 turnovers with 0 points off of those turnovers. And you look at the last 3 weeks, turnovers have resulted in points. So I think that's going to be premium. Just hold on to the football, grind it out, make Oklahoma's offense drive on you, force them into some mistakes, and just get out of there with a win.
I want to say that out of the last 9 turnovers we've forced, it's resulted in 7 scores. So not a bad turnover margin for the Tide.
Yeah, the statistical average per turnover, the NCAA average is 3 points.
Yes.
When you get a turnover, for every turnover, you normally average, teams average 3 points off those turnovers. So, you go back to Tennessee. Had Alabama averaged 3 points off those turnovers, that's 9 extra points. You win the game by 2 instead of losing by 7.
That's exactly right. And I'm taking Alabama. Roll Tide all the way. Ain't no Boomer Sooner in this place, boys. No Boomer Sooner. Colin, my boy Colin, is not here this week, and I only have one bet for you guys. I'm sorry, I'm not as in tune with that. Colin actually went 2-2 on the previous week, and he is now 7-7 overall. But I'm gonna give you just one bet for you guys to take this week, and it's gonna be the Penn State Nittany Lions. They are facing off the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They are an 11.5 favorite to win on the 3:30 kick. Penn State has been dominant this season, aside from Ohio State. But yet again, keep in mind it's their schedule. They're averaging 33 points a game, and they're only giving up less than 14. Minnesota's coming into this game on a 26-19 loss at Rutgers. And the Golden Gophers already have a pair of home losses against, unranked teams. So Penn State has won 6 of the last 8. And so I think everybody would be safe in going the Nittany Lions to cover this at 11.5 this week. So everybody go ahead and punch that ticket in. Twins are not here. This segment is out this week. We shall return that segment next week. Good episode here tonight.
So
Randy.
watch Minnesota covering the spread on that one. I'm sitting here looking that up.
I don't know.
I'm looking at it. Minnesota is actually, now this is against the spread. They're actually 4-1 in their last 5 against the spread.
I don't think they get this one though.
And they beat Illinois, which is one of those mighty Big Ten ranked teams. Beat USC. I don't think they beat Penn State, but I could see them, PJ Fleck, baby, rowing the boat. I could see them keeping this within 10.
Nah. I think you're safe to take Penn State in this one.
You know me, I got to come on here and call out one of your hosts, man. So that's what Colin gets for not being here.
Wow. Randy from Mobile with shots.
Shots fired.
Shots fired, Randy.
Shots fired.
Oh, yeah. Well, guys, we thank you for tuning in. Randy, thank you for joining us as a special guest this week in lieu of the guys having family stuff going on tonight. We thank you for the guest picks. Thank you for your insight as always. You're a great listener to the show. Long-time listener, first-time special guest, and we had a blast this episode, did we not? So
absolutely.
I think we all can say a roll tide and a good night on this episode.
Good to see you, buddy. Take care.